Now, as we are discussing this notion of inequality, discrimination, let's talk a little bit about the caste system, because guess what? These notions need further explanation. Okay. Why these things are important? Because see, when we are talking about caste system, we know that this is superstition, or at least that's what we are told by the so-called enlightened people. We are told that these things are barbaric, these things are vicious, these things are superstitious. That's what we are being told. But what the people doesn't question is this, that is this student ready? Is this student prepared to receive education? We talked about caste system, that what is the basis of this discrimination caste system, that somebody should be given knowledge and somebody shouldn't be given knowledge. So the obvious question is why? One of the answer can be that is the student ready? Is the student prepared to receive knowledge? Because guess what? Knowledge is power, and it certainly can be a very dangerous thing. To understand the context, I have to take you back to the ancient Indian times, like how knowledge was given back then. Nowadays, knowledge has become a commodity. But this is not how knowledge used to be distributed in the ancient times in India. Knowledge used to be sacred. Okay, there are temple priests, like there are gurus, like these are the master. Students used to live in the Guru Griha, the house of the master, and the master used to decide whether the disciple, the Shisha, the student, is actually ready to receive knowledge. Nowadays, you go to a college or a university, you pay for the tuition fee and you get a degree. It is like a service that you are paying for. It's like buying a cup of coffee. You go to a coffee shop, you pay $5 and then they give you a cup of coffee. But this is not how knowledge used to be given back in India in the ancient times. Like knowledge used to be for free. Knowledge is not something that is paid for. Right now you are paying for a service. You are paying for a service and you are being provided with the service. But that is not how knowledge used to be given. There was this notion of holiness, respect and veneration and all those things which have been completely decoupled in the modern times. So the student will be living in the Guru Griha, in the house of the master, and then the master will decide whether the student is ready to receive knowledge. This is the basis of caste system. It is not about just simply superstition or discrimination. If that is the case, let's say for instance, my intellectual master, Swami Vivekananda, he was born as Sudra. Narendra Datta, he was born as a Sudra, a Dalit, an untouchable, so to speak, in modern terms. Then how come a Dalit became a Yogi? But Brahmins are supposed to become Yogi, not Dalits. Or at least that's what the enlightened people tells us. It doesn't make any sense, does it? And then the other thing we used to keep here, the Brahmins were the one who used to oppress everyone else. Right? They stole the scriptures, they oppressed everyone else. If that is the case, then you look at the example of Rama. He killed Ravana. Who was Ravana? Ravana was a fervent devotee. He was a Brahmin, he was a yogi. He was a fervent devotee of Lord Shiva. To please Lord Shiva, he used to have 10 heads and he used to cut off one of his head and gave it as an anjali, as a sacrifice to Lord Shiva to please him. So these things doesn't really necessarily make any sense. Like if you think about the prevailing narrative that Brahmins used to, they are the oppressor, they used to oppress everyone. If that is the case, then why Rama killed Ravana? Like if you want to put those things into context, let's talk about Prophet Muhammad, the perfect human. Who was Muhammad? Again, if you are honest about Muhammad, who was Muhammad? He was the worst criminal of history, one of the most, like if not the most, he is definitely one of the most worst criminal of history. He did some of the most egregious, most vicious, most violence, violent, most depraved, most sadistic things that you can imagine, or even if you can't imagine, Muhammad did all of those things in the name of Allah. He raped, butchered, murdered completely innocent civilians, like in the most sadistic, in the most barbaric, in the most unimaginable way possible. And what did Allah did to Muhammad? Nothing. Muhammad did all of these sadistic things in the name of Allah, in the name of his God. What did God do about it? Nothing. God gave him a clean cheat that you go and murder people, I don't care. But then again, you look at Ravana. What was Ravana's fault? Ravana abducted Rama's wife. And guess what Rama did? He killed his own devotee. Rama, the God incarnate, killed his own devotee. So these things necessarily doesn't make any sense, that if there is a Brahmin, like Brahmins are the one who are oppressing everyone, then how come Rama killed Ravana? Ravana was a Brahmin. It doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't also make any sense when it comes to Dalit being an yogi, Vivekananda. So look, my argument is, you may say this is a superstition, you may say that like these things are completely, barbaric, vicious, discriminatory and all those things, but my understanding is you shouldn't be taking these things as superstition, because what the Indian philosophers figured out, like as we discussed about the notion of divine vision, the notion of freedom, like time, space and causation, these things even doesn't apply. That you can transcend all of these boundaries when these people are talking about those things. Do you honestly believe that you are qualified to talk about yet another foundational principle of that civilization? The civilization of Bharat, the Hinduism. Do you honestly believe that you are qualified to talk about caste system? Look, I'm not trying to insult everyone's wisdom or anything, but you shouldn't be taking these things completely as a superstition. That will lead you to nowhere. Okay, that is my point. So instead of being biased about your own views, instead of being self-righteous about these things, you should take into these things and see if you can understand how those people looked at the world. Okay, definitely my understanding is they knew a lot more than we know at this point. So that's about an overview of the entire system. But now let's dissect this caste system. Okay, so far we covered about two different notions. We covered about the sacredness of knowledge, and also we covered about the preparation for knowledge. Now these two notions are very, very key in our understanding of civilization, which we will get to in a minute, okay? But now let's shift our focus to a different notion. Individualism versus collectivism. We are talking about inequality and of course equality. Individualism is inequality. And what is collectivism? Collectivism is equality. Like, what is actually civilization? Civilization is to reach an individual's full potential. If you look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the psychologist Abraham Maslow, what is at the top of the pyramid? Self-actualization. Like, if you cut the jargon, what is this self-actualization? Self-actualization means that you have reached your full potential. As an individual, you are on your own journey to reach your full potential. Journey of a Pashu to Pashupati. What is Hinduism is all about? Hinduism is about this journey. Journey of a Pashu to Pashupati. Again, we discussed all of these things in the previous episodes as well, okay? You are going through this cycle of life and death until you reach perfection. Until you reach freedom. Journey of an animal, a Pashu to Pashupati. Pashu, animal. Pashupati, Lord Shiva. You are on your journey to Lord Shiva. This journey, this self-actualization, this reaching of the highest potential is called civilization. Now the problem is, what are the roadblocks along the way, along your journey to reach perfection, to reach your full potential? That's where the second notion comes along, collectivism. You are on your own journey. Along the way, if there is a roadblock, you will not be able to reach your full potential. So what are the roadblocks in your journey? The roadblocks is this collectivism, because collectivism has to be created, has to be forced. Roadblock is this equality, is this collectivism. Wherever there is a collectivism in the society, that society has a roadblock. So what is the challenge of a civilization? The challenge of a civilization is to remove this roadblock, is to remove this collectivism. See, there is nothing in this world which is equal to each other. Nothing. Even two chairs that comes out of the same machine, they are not equal. The bricks, the blocks of bricks that are just behind me, there are many of them in one place. None of them are equal. Although obviously they were made by the same mold. Nothing in this universe is equal to each other. This is a fact of nature. This is the fundamental fact of nature. So when you force equality, guess what you do? You bring down civilization. You are forcing equality. It is by definition a force. By definition, it is a force that goes against nature. And this force is by definition tyranny. Nature does not support equality. So if you have to create equality, that means you have to force equality. That is by definition a force. And that is how you destroy civilization. This is the roadblock in your path to perfection, in your path to self-actualization, in your path to reaching full potential. When you have individualism, when you have inequality in the society, that society is civilized. And when you have collectivism in the society, guess what the society is? That society is uncivilized. A civilization must uphold inequality, must uphold individualism. Now the question is how all of these things fit into the caste system. Now what Hindus are saying that, see, if you have to reach your full potential, and that can only be done by acquiring knowledge. And these knowledge need preparation. These knowledge needs certain environment. An environment has grave consequences. This is what the Hindus are saying, that environment can generate suggestions. The environment that you are in right now, this environment can generate suggestions. The suggestions that will be translated into thought in your brain. And these thoughts will lead to action. What is the seed of action? Thought. And where does these thoughts come from? These thoughts mostly originated in the environment. Let's say, for instance, there is a snake right in front of me. Will I be sitting down and talking to you? No, because of the environment. If there is a thunderstorm, if there is a surge, if there is a bomb exploding somewhere, if there is a foul smell coming, if there is a fire, if there are smoke, there are many elements in this environment. All of these elements are constantly affecting our brain. So Hindus are saying that if you have to practice knowledge, it has to be done in a certain environment. The sacredness of knowledge, These ideas have been completely missed, have been completely neglected by the so-called Enlightenment philosophers. They completely failed to grasp this idea. Under democracy, what do you have? You have the separation of church and state. Again, we will come back to this notion when we'll be discussing democracy. There are other problems too, which we will discuss then. But one of the foundational problems of this separation of church and state is this, that you have separated sacredness from the society. Who gave the world temples? Like when you look at the Indian philosophy, how did India build all these temples? And the most important question is, why did they build these temples? Temple is a place of sacredness, if anything else. It has this deity, it has this incense, it has these flowers. You have to take the shoes outside of the temple before you even enter. So this is a place of sacredness. And this idea of sacredness was flourished with the spread of temples, with the building of different temples in almost all over India. Temples, these were the places where knowledge was practiced. We are talking about environment. Like in the last couple of episodes, we talked about when we were discussing that how do you uphold civilization. We talked about that suppressing of the negative tendencies and uplifting of the positive tendencies is the way to uphold civilization, arousing of the Kundalini. But there is a second part. The second part is the environment. To uphold this civilization, to suppress these negative tendencies and to uphold these positive tendencies, you also need an environment. Let's say, for instance, you want to eat something. Can you eat in a toilet? If not, why not? Because this is not the right environment. If you want to eat, you want to go to a kitchen. Okay? And you want to make sure that there are no foul smelling coming from anywhere. You make your place nice and beautiful and warm and cozy because it gives you mental satisfaction, it gives you comfort. If I put you, let's say, under the scorching sun, would you be able to, focus on something? If not, why not? Because this is not the right environment. This notion of environment is key in understanding of civilization. And Indian philosophers, they are the only one who actually figured out, not only that they figured out, but they implemented a system that knowledge should only be practiced in a sacred environment. This is where the notion of temple coming along. These idea of sacredness have been completely butchered, have been completely misunderstood, have been completely ignored in the entire Western discourse of civilization. Entire discourse. And I think it is a grave mistake. It is a grave mistake. So when these Indian philosophers are saying that we have to implement caste system, that some people should be given knowledge and some people shouldn't be given knowledge, what was the underlying philosophy behind it? The underlying philosophy is the environment. See, some people are stupid. They cannot learn. We are not born with the same mental capabilities. We are born with different mental aptitude. Okay? And to run a civilization, to create a civilization, we need basically 4 types of people. We need the brain. Okay? We need the scientists. We need philosophers. In the ancient times in India, these people are called rishis or sages. Okay, these are the scientists in modern term. So this was the first type of people. And you have the second type of people. You need the muscle. If you have something of value, you have to guard it. You need a watchdog To protect your valuables. This is the reason why nowadays we are talking about borders. Open borders, it comes with lots of challenges. But anyway, so you need the second type of people who can guard your valuables. So these are the two types of people. And then of course you need money. You need the entrepreneurs, you need the businessmen to run the country. These are the third category of people. Businessmen. Man with the money. And then finally you have the fourth type of people. Some of them who will be working in these businesses. Okay, the businesses that are managed by the third type of people, the businessmen. These are the people, let's say, the artisans, the craftsmen, anything and everything that the businesses need to perform a task. So these people will be assisting those businesses. So these are the four different types of people that you will need to create a civilization. And in the last category, you will have some people who will not be able to learn because they have very low IQ. They have very low mental aptitude. They will not be able to learn. And also, there are people who will be necessary to perform the menial task. Because if you create an open market, in an open market, people with the higher caliber will move up the ladder. And people naturally with the lower caliber will fall behind. Like this is just an open market principle. It's not that a new revelation coming along. So people who are at the lowest echelon of this hierarchy, Indian philosophers are saying that, oh look, these people doesn't need actually knowledge. Let's say for instance, they need some expertise, but they are not necessarily required for the purpose of knowledge. And also the fact that knowledge requires particular environment. Just the example that I gave you, can you eat in a toilet? You can't. So to practice knowledge, you need to have the proper environment and also the fact that you need IQ. So if you are lagging in both of these cases, let's say that you perform some menial task, let's say that you are a butcher, let's say for instance you are a toilet cleaner. Again, with no disrespect, but just putting things bluntly. These jobs doesn't require much talent. Okay. And also the fact that the environment is not conducive to this sacredness. This is where the caste system is coming along, that these people, they do not need knowledge and they are not capable of handling knowledge, and that's why they should not have access to knowledge, that these people should not be allowed to come into the temple. How knowledge used to be given? Knowledge was given in a temple under a priest. But now, because the jobs they are performing, these jobs are menial jobs, they are not clean jobs. These jobs are not necessarily maintaining the right environment for handling knowledge. Because knowledge comes with sacredness. Because they are performing this task, they should not be allowed to come to the temple. Because temple is a place of sacredness. This is where the caste system comes along. But the problem is here. We are talking about an open market philosophy. That when you have an open market, that's where people naturally tend to find their own place. This is an open market scenario. This is not hereditary. Just because they are performing some menial task doesn't necessarily mean that their sons and daughters will also be performing the same task, will also be barred from the temples. That is not the idea. But at some point people misunderstood these philosophies and they obviously made it birth-based. Again, we are going back from individualism, from open market. Now we are going back to collectivism. From individualism, we are now going back to the collectivism. When you have this forced equality in any shape or form, because these people cannot perform these tasks, that means their sons and daughters will also have to be barred from entering the temple. Now you have this forced equality. You see where the problem is, where the challenge is. In any civilization, the biggest challenge of a civilization is to bring down this equality, because equality doesn't exist, and when you force this equality, it is a force by definition. When you force this equality, you actually bring down the civilization, you actually bring down the community. So this is precisely what has happened, because in the open market these people cannot perform the tasks that are required, the mental aptitude that is required to perform certain tasks. They cannot perform those tasks. That means now they have to be employed in one of the areas of the economy, and Indian philosophers are suggesting that, look, because knowledge requires sacredness, these environments are not conducive to maintain this sacredness, and as such these people should not have access to education. And then of course their families have also been barred from entering the temple. This forced equality has been enforced by some of the Brahmins, some of the brains, and that's how Hinduism actually declined. But this is coming out of free market. This is coming out of open market philosophy. In an open market, some people will do better, some people will not do better. So what are you going to do with these people? You have to employ them somewhere, but those environments may not be suitable for practicing knowledge. This is where this entire notion of caste system coming along. Again, this idea of sacredness have been completely missed by the so-called enlightened philosophers. You cannot show me one philosopher who actually pointed out this very fundamental, this very key element of civilization, sacredness. So this knowledge, the idea is that if you cannot maintain sacredness, this knowledge can be a very, very, very dangerous tool. Because guess what? We human beings, we receive suggestions from the environment. What is human psychology? Human psychology is constantly getting suggestion. Our brain is constantly getting suggestion from the environment. So if the environment is not maintained properly, guess what this guy is gonna do? We will create bad thoughts, evil thoughts. And thoughts are matters. If you cannot maintain the proper environment, this environment will send suggestion, and that suggestion will translate into thought, and that thought will translate into action. You see the problem. This is why this preparation for knowledge, aka environment, is very, very key in our understanding of civilization. Again, which have been completely missed. That knowledge is sacred, these notions have been completely missed by the so-called Western enlightened philosophers. So how do you create a peaceful society? You have to include temple into the state. Right now, what do we have? We have the separation of church and state under secularism. Again, we will talk about this secularism in the next episode as well. But the problem is, this is the idea to destroy civilization. When you separate sacredness from the environment, you create evil. These ideas have been completely missed by the so-called enlightened philosophers. So what is the highest potential that a human being can achieve? This is what we are going to discuss. But before that, let's do a quick recap. So far, we talked about the sacredness of knowledge and also the preparation for knowledge. And as part of this preparation for knowledge, that is environment, we talked about the roadblock. that what is the roadblock that will hold you back from reaching your full potential. We mentioned that collectivism can surely be a roadblock. You have to uphold individualism, and as such, collectivism can come as a roadblock. To put it the other way, caste system cannot be a notion for collectivism. Just because someone is born as a Dalit doesn't mean he cannot be Swami Vivekananda. Just because someone is born as a Sudra doesn't mean he cannot be a Yogi. And also the fact that just because someone is born as a Dalit doesn't mean a Brahmin cannot teach him. Ramakrishna Paramahansa, who was the intellectual master of Swami Vivekananda. And as Vivekananda puts it, caste system is always fluid. It is not hereditary, it is fluid. It is moving. It is an idea of open market economy. It is not a notion of hereditary collectivism. It's not an idea of class based on hereditary births. Just because you are born as a Dalit doesn't mean that your sons and daughters have to be barred from entering into the temple. That is not what they are saying. It is fluid. It is moving. It is changing. It is not static. It is not hereditary. It is not a notion of collectivism. Alrighty, so now let's talk about the highest potential for humanity. What does Hinduism say about this highest potential? To understand this notion, let me introduce you to yet another concept. We discussed about the sacredness of knowledge earlier, but now let's talk about the type of knowledge. You heard me right. Type of knowledge. Previously we talked about the sacredness of knowledge, yes? But right now we are going to talk about the type of knowledge. What we understand as knowledge is basically something that is within the domain of five senses. Hinduism says that there are two types of knowledge. A knowledge that falls within the five senses, within the realm of physical world, and then there is yet another type of knowledge that goes beyond the physical world, that goes beyond five senses. What is science? Science is the study of physical law. It is by definition physical, within the domain of five senses. But what Indian philosophers said that there are yet another type of knowledge that goes beyond five senses. The study of Raja Yoga. What is Raja Yoga? It's the study of non-physical phenomenon. Raja Yoga is the study of non-physical phenomenon, the phenomenon that goes beyond physical boundaries, that goes beyond five senses. This is what the Indian philosophers, for the first time in humanity, they figured out when some 10,000 years ago. 5 to 10,000 years, could be as high as 15,000 years. This is what they studied. Non-physical phenomenon, Raja Yoga. This is what they studied some 5 to 10,000 years ago. See, when we are told that Europeans brought civilization to humanity, can you see what level of ignorance are we talking about? What level of lunacy are we talking about? In this entire discourse of Western philosophy, not a single word exists that highlight even one bit about this study of non-physical phenomenon. Not a single word. Hindus are saying that the notion of divine vision that goes beyond five senses. The philosophy of oneness, Advaita philosophy, where does this Advaita philosophy is coming from? It is coming from the notion of divine vision. And where does this divine vision comes from? It comes from the study of Raja Yoga. It comes from the study of non-physical phenomenon. So we are told that the Europeans brought civilization. Can you see what level of nonsense, what level of lunacy are we being forced fed? Are we being shoved down our throat?